She said, the basement smell was just old pipes, but I found something buried in the walls. I moved into Maya's house on a wet Saturday that made the cardboard boxes sag in my arms. The place looked like every mortgage ad I'd ever scrolled past. Small front porch, a maple that shed leaves in a perfect ring, a brass knocker shaped like a sleeping lion. Maya had inherited it from her aunt and held the keys like they were proof of something righteous. It's not big, she said, but it's ours if we want it to be. She said it with the confidence of someone who had already decided for both of us. By midnight, the last box was in. The air mattress was inflated in the living room, and the neighborhood settled under the kind of quiet that clicks in your ears. I couldn't sleep. First night in a new place static. So I watched the shadows of car headlights crawl across the ceiling. A minute before my phone flipped to 2:17, I started to notice it. Not a smell you walk into, but a ribbon of something that threads itself into your nose and tightens. Metallic, like wet coins, but with a sweet roundness that made my tongue go cottony. Do you smell that? I whispered. Maya was half asleep, forearm thrown across her eyes. Old pipes, she said. When the heat kicks at night. It's just this house being dramatic. I wanted to agree. The house gave you so many reasons to forgive it. The creak of the second stair, the slant smile of the front steps, the skylight above the hall that made morning feel intentional. But the smell persisted, dull and relentless, pinning my thoughts. It kept tugging, and the thread led down the hall, across the kitchen where we'd eaten floor picnic pizza, to the door with the sticky latch that opened onto the basement stairs. Maya felt me shift and reached for my wrist. No tours tonight, she murmured. I should have warned you, it's creepy down there. Aunt Luba used to keep canning jars and old paint, and it got weird with time. Weird how? She was already drifting. Just old house weird. We'll fix it when we tear up the carpet. She said carpet like a promise. I lay awake until the clock said 3:40 and the smell loosened, as if whatever valve controlled it had finally turned. At 6, the street woke up and the normal daytime scent settled. Dish soap, coffee, the faint toastiness of the baseboards warming. I told myself every place has a night voice and a day one. In the morning, Maya made coffee that tasted like the beginning of a better life. We opened boxes, folded towels into the shallow linen closet, argued about which wall the couch wanted more. The basement door lurked in my periphery like a guilty thought. When I reached for the knob, Maya appeared with a roll of painter's tape and a smile that hovered just left of her eyes. Let's not, she said. There's a broken step and some loose wiring. I don't need you twisting an ankle on day 2. Then I'll go careful, I said, pretending I was joking. She popped the tape over the latch anyway, an improvised warning stripe. Tomorrow, she promised. I'll clear the worst of it. Aunt Luba had a hoarding phase. The day ran on tasks small enough to feel like progress. Screws in the curtain rod, the TV that refused to find the Wi-Fi, the white noise fan Maya set up in the living room with casual finality. I sleep better with it, she said. Trust me. That night the fan churned, and my body yielded in a way it hadn't the night before, until the same second hand drew a circle and 2:17 arrived like a person you've been trying not to text. The smell was sharper, as if it had learned the layout of my nose. I stared into the dark and knew, without knowing how I knew, that it wasn't riding the air from a vent, but pushing from below. I sat up, and the fan pitch seemed to thicken, as if agreeing. Maya mumbled, sleep, with the sleepy annoyance of someone who wants the world to pause until morning. I padded to the kitchen, then to the taped door. The tape was a thin blue vein under my thumb. I didn't pull it. I pressed my ear to the wood. The basement breathed. Old houses do that. But beneath it there was a very soft ticking, like pennies rattling in a glass jar 3 rooms away. In the morning, over scrambled eggs, I said, it smells stronger at the same time every night. She stirred her coffee as if consulting a compass. Thermostat cycles. Heat expands the metal, condensation, science. You say science like you own it. I own a house, that's close, she said, and winked like the joke was a bridge we could both walk across. It felt weird to push again. This was our first week. We were supposed to be learning where the spare light bulbs lived, not fighting the basement. I let it go. That day she went to work and I stayed to meet the internet guy. He came and left a coil of cable by the outlet like a snake shedding its skin. I killed an hour opening random drawers. The house had that generational drawer rattle. Old keys that fit nothing, a blunt paring knife, rubber bands too dry to stretch. In the back room off the kitchen, a door that I'd assumed opened to the yard revealed a shallow closet with a newish lock slapped onto old wood. We'll put brooms in there, Maya had said on the tour. Now it was empty but for a white extension cord snaking upward and out of sight, feeding the fan. I tugged and it hummed a warning. Around 5, Miss Koval from next door brought us a bundt cake baked in a pan shaped like a cathedral. She was the kind of neighbor who makes a study of faces. "You're the one," she told me. "Tall, nice shoulders, carry boxes without complaining." I laughed and she invited herself in like old world courtesy still had legal standing. Her eyes found the basement door and tightened. "You keep that shut." The aunt, God rest her from her restless, she did renovations down there at odd hours. "Odd how?" I asked. She made the not my business face older people deserve medals for. "Night is for quiet," she said. "But every house decides for itself." Before she left, she patted my wrist, then, with perfect casualness, said, "You hear anything? You call. Better you are embarrassed than sorry." When the door closed, I stood alone with the cake and the weird sentence echoing, "Better you are embarrassed than sorry." Maya got home after sunset with paint chips fanned like a hand of cards. "Which one is renter's beige but with taste?" she asked. And I let myself be pulled into the ritual of pretending that one shade of pale is more virtuous than another. We ate cake on paper towels, talking about how the crack in the living room could pass for a river on a map. When I brought up Ms. Koval's remark, Maya rolled her eyes. "She's known for hearing ghosts and then calling code enforcement." "Don't feed it." "Feed what?" "The idea that every creak is a confession." We watched one episode of a show where the houses are always open plan and the couples never sweat during demo day. At 11, Maya yawned theatrically and set the fan one notch louder. "I have a morning stand-up and I'd rather not stand it up," she said. I smiled because she wanted me to. I tried to sleep, counting the soft whir as it sanded the sharp parts off the silence. The minute hand marched, and my body did that fall through the mattress thing twice before landing in the soft middle space. I might have stayed there if not for the exactness of clocks. At 2:17, the smell arrived with purpose, filling my mouth, as if I'd bitten into the air and found it rotten. Under the fan, under the house breath, there was a space in the noise like a missing tooth. And in that space the faint tick-tick, tick-tick, just this side of imagination. I sat up, the kind of slow sit-up you do when you don't want a dream to break its cover. I took the phone flashlight and crossed the hall. The tape on the basement door lay unbroken but frayed where it met the jamb. I peeled it back and the sound didn't change. Just the knowledge that I'd done the thing I wasn't supposed to do joined the room. I opened the door and a colder draft collected around my ankles, lifting the hairs there. The smell strengthened only slightly, as though it had already decided how much it would give me. The stairs were narrow and wore their age openly, edges softened by people who had always stepped a little to the left. I let the beam skim the wall. The basement greeted me like a mouth, cool and damp, the exhale of earth. It was the ordinary kind of clutter. Jars cloudy with dust, a box of tiles in a pattern that never made it upstairs, a long rug thrown over concrete as if comfort could be layered on. In the far corner, a white pedestal fan stood with school principal patience, pointed not into the room, but directly at a section of wall. "Why are you aimed at nothing?" I whispered. It didn't answer, of course, just pushed its invisible hand forward. I walked closer. The rug's edge flipped where someone had taped it and then peeled the tape. I caught my toe and nearly cursed loud enough to explain myself to the sleeping woman upstairs. The smell was intoxicating in the literal sense, making my brain fizz slowly. I held the phone higher. At first I couldn't tell what I was seeing. The wall was wall, but the light skated over paint that shone a little too evenly, plaster that seemed to have learned its own reflection. There was a straightness to it, the kind a hand can't fake without practice. I let the beam hover and it found what my eye had been resisting, a pale stripe slightly raised, running in a vertical line from floor to just under the ceiling. So true it made the crooked parts around it look guilty. I touched it and felt the fine grain of sanded compound, a healed skin where something had once opened. By the time morning came, I convinced myself I'd exaggerated what I saw. A seam in plaster isn't a crime. But the smell clung to my hair like smoke, and I caught it again when I bent to tie my shoes. Maya kissed my cheek, humming like a woman who didn't notice anything at all, and left for work with her coffee in a travel cup. I called a plumber. I told myself it was sensible, even responsible. If it was pipes, better to fix them now than later. His name was Stepan, a compact man with a flashlight clipped to his hat. He threaded his snake cam through the clean-out valve and hummed thoughtfully while I tried not to hover. After half an hour, he straightened, wiped his hands, and shook his head. "Pipes are good," he said. "Newer than the house, PVC all the way to the main. No cracks, no leaks. Whatever you're smelling, it's not water or sewage. Could it be the furnace?" "Furnace is fine." I'd look to the basement walls. Old concrete can sweat, trap mildew. Or, he shrugged, something dead in there. Happens. He said it like saying rain happens. Then he packed his gear and left me with a business card and a knot in my chest. That afternoon, Ms. Koval caught me hauling the trash out. She leaned on her fence, eyes narrowing against the sun. You had the plumber? Just routine. She smirked like she'd already read the truth. Luba had them too long ago. Didn't help. Smell always comes back. I asked before I could stop myself. What was she fixing down there? The smirk fell away. She looked at the house, not me. She started building at night. Hammering, sawing. No permits. After that girl vanished from across the way, Katya, little thing with the green shoes, Luba never let anyone down there again. Her words hung like fog. I opened my mouth, but Maya's car turned into the drive, and Ms. Koval clamped her lips. By the time Maya walked up with groceries, the old woman had vanished inside. Maya asked what we were talking about. I told her. She said your aunt did renovations at odd hours. Pfft. That woman thinks raccoons are CIA drones. Don't encourage her. She balanced the grocery bag against her hip. Seriously, don't let her stories get in your head. I need you sane. That night, while Maya slept, I lay staring at the ceiling. The smell returned. So punctual it felt like an appointment. But now there was something under it. A faint, steady tapping. Tick, tick, tick. Too deliberate for pipes. I crept out of bed, heart hammering. At the basement door, the blue painter's tape was curled at the edges like it wanted me to peel it. I pressed my ear to the wood. The ticking was clearer here. Metal against metal. I forced myself back to bed. At breakfast, I asked, "Do you ever hear noises?" "Every house makes noises." She didn't look up from her toast. "You want city silence? Move to a condo." It should have ended there, but the sound sat inside my chest all day. When Maya went out for errands, I peeled the tape, pulled the door open, and crept down. The smell thickened like syrup. The fan in the corner hummed, pointed at that same wall. I shifted the rug to see what it hid. My foot caught on something. A faint outline, metal framed, set into the concrete. A hatch. Square, about 2 feet across. Someone had filled the edges with silicone, as if sealing it against water, or against something else. The ticking seemed to come from underneath. I crouched, fingers hovering over the seam. My pulse was too loud to hear anything else. Just as I reached to pick at the silicone, I heard the front door upstairs slam. Maya's voice floated down, cheerful. "I brought dinner." I yanked the rug back, heart racing, and scrambled upstairs like I hadn't been anywhere near it. She met me in the kitchen with takeout bags. "You look pale," she said. "Just tired," I managed. She smiled, brushing my shoulder, but her eyes flicked toward the basement door. The look was quick, too quick, like a card a magician palms back into the deck. That night, lying awake at 2:17, I couldn't unhear the ticking, and all I could think about was that sealed hatch under the rug, waiting for me like a question. The next day, I told myself I'd leave it alone. Curiosity was a bad look when you were trying to build a life with someone. But I couldn't focus on anything. Work emails blurred. Even my coffee tasted like the smell from the basement. By evening, I had convinced myself that if I just gathered proof, something concrete, I could stop feeling insane. So I did what any guilty man does. I used what I had. An old phone with a cracked screen, a flashlight, duct tape. When Maya went for a jog, I taped the phone under a shelf in the basement. Light angled at the corner where the fan hummed, and the rug hid its secret. I set it to record video, then pulled the rug back over the hatch and left as if nothing happened. That night, the smell thickened again, and the faint tick-tick returned. I lay still, my heart matching it beat for beat, while Maya's breath deepened beside me. By morning, I retrieved the phone before she woke. The footage was grainy, gray-blue, but the audio was clean. Around 2:20 the sound started. Faint footsteps across the concrete, slow, measured, not mine. Then came a soft scrape, as if something heavy dragged. And then, clear as if whispered in my own ear, a woman's voice. "Shh. Stay down." I dropped the phone. My hands shook so badly I had to brace against the shelf. The basement was empty. The fan hummed on, but someone had moved it. The angle was different from when I'd set it. When I asked Maya about it over breakfast, she didn't blink. "Oh, I was looking for a power strip down there. Maybe I moved it." "Why? Did you film something?" The way she said it made me swallow the truth. I lied. Number just thought it looked different. That afternoon, when she left for errands again, I went back down. My nerves were screaming, but my hands worked fast. I pulled at the baseboard along the wall where the plaster seam ran. The nails were too new. Someone had screwed the boards in recently, the wood lighter than the surrounding trim. I unscrewed one and light spilled into a narrow cavity between the old concrete and the drywall skin someone had slapped over it. Inside, the void smelled like an old attic and something sharper. I reached in and felt cardboard. When I pulled it free, the dust stung my throat. A box. Inside, photographs. Polaroids. Curling at the edges. Children sitting on stools in the basement, their faces blurred by bad flash. One picture showed a girl holding her knees, eyes fixed on something beyond the frame. Another was of a boy, his face turned away, arms bound loosely in his lap. Beneath the stack was a Ziploc bag. Inside floated tufts of hair tied with string. Some locks were labeled in marker K. M dates scrawled across the plastic. 15 years ago. And at the very bottom, a jar. Cloudy fluid. Something dark swirling like ink inside. My stomach lurched. I shoved the box back and covered the cavity with the board. I washed my hands twice upstairs before I realized I was scrubbing them raw. When Maya came home, she found me staring at the sink. "You okay?" she asked. I found stuff in the wall. She paused too long, then she laughed lightly, like she'd practiced. "Oh God, my aunt's therapy projects." Therapy? She believed in weird home methods. Kids from troubled homes would stay here for weekends. She called it immersion therapy. The jars? Probably her memorials. Pets mostly. She hated burying them outside. I stared at her. Those weren't pets. And the kids? They're just photos. Don't twist it. My aunt was strange, but not a monster. She placed a hand on my arm, pressing until it hurt. "Please, don't let the house get in your head." Her touch was warm, her eyes soft, but her words slid like oil. I wanted to believe her, to let the weight lift. But when I closed my eyes, all I saw was one Polaroid. A girl with a bracelet shaped like a letter. A K. Later that night, I went to take the trash out. Ms. Koval was smoking at her back step, haloed in the lighter's flare. She saw me and asked, "Did you find it?" "Find what?" Her eyes narrowed. "The bracelet. She wore it every day. Silver K, they never found it." The smoke curled between us. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Back inside, Maya was brushing her teeth, humming, as if nothing about the house had ever been wrong. I lay awake. The Polaroid burned behind my eyelids, and the smell returned. Thicker now, almost sour. The ticking followed. And somewhere behind the wall, something shifted. I barely slept after that. The Polaroids wouldn't leave me alone. The blurred faces and that silver K bracelet that matched exactly what Ms. Koval had described. By morning, I had convinced myself that I needed to look deeper. I couldn't live above that basement without knowing what was sealed inside it. When Maya left for work, I went down again. The fan droned like a sentinel, the rug covering the hatch like it had been trained to guard it. I ignored both and took a scraper to the wall above the cavity where I'd found the box. The plaster resisted at first, then flaked away in chalky chunks. Underneath the white paint was something darker. Letters. Not carved carefully, but scratched like fingernails dragged across soft cement before it dried. The grooves formed words. "Let me up." I stumbled back, heart slamming in my ears. The smell seemed to surge, thick and cloying. I shoved the plaster chips back against the wall as if I could undo what I'd uncovered. I forced myself to check the small utility closet tucked under the basement stairs. One Maya always kept locked. The padlock was old, but the hasp screws were new. I pried them loose with a screwdriver. Inside, beneath a tangle of extension cords, was a dusty plastic bag. Inside the bag, an old handheld recorder, the kind with tiny cassette tapes. I popped one in and pressed play. Static. Then a woman's voice, stern, low. "No more crying. Neighbors can hear you. Sit still." A shuffle, a muffled whimper. Then a metallic scrape. Tape cut short. I stopped the recorder with shaking fingers. My reflection in the plastic window looked sick, pale. That evening, I couldn't hold it in. I confronted Maya. I told her about the words on the wall, the recorder, the tapes. She went still for a long moment, then sighed, sitting at the table like a teacher called into a parent conference. "My aunt had methods," she said carefully. "She worked with kids no one wanted. Addicts' kids. Troubled teens. She believed discipline was therapy. She'd keep them here weekends, sometimes longer. She thought if they learned silence, they'd learn control. It was harsh, but it wasn't murder. You think writing 'Let me up' on a wall is therapy?" Her jaw clenched. She panicked after one weekend went wrong. She covered things up so she wouldn't be blamed. You have to understand. If that all came out, the neighbors, the police, it would have destroyed her. And me now. I can't lose this house. Her eyes shone with something between pleading and threat. I didn't argue. But when she left to shower, I slipped across the street to Ms. Koval's porch. I showed her one of the Polaroids. She pressed a hand to her mouth. "That bracelet. Katya's. She wore it the day she went missing." Her voice broke. "They searched everywhere. They even asked Luba once, but she said the girl never came here. We all knew better, but no one proved it. I asked if the police had records. She said yes. Renovation permits pulled the very week Katya disappeared. Something about non-structural partition walls she'd never forgotten. Back at the house, I tried to act normal, but I couldn't stop staring at Maya. The way she folded towels, the way she hummed when she cooked, like she'd rehearsed domestic bliss. Every ordinary thing she did now seemed sharpened, deliberate. That night, at 2:17, the smell returned with force. My stomach clenched. I lay listening. Under the smell, under the fan, came a scrape, then another, and then, faint but unmistakable, 3 knocks. I whispered to myself, "It's the house. It's just the house." But I couldn't stop imagining the words on the wall scratched in desperation. "Let me up." The next morning, I called in sick to work and sat at the kitchen table with the Polaroid spread out in front of me. The kids' faces blurred by bad flash, the faint outlines of the basement in the background. Stools, the rug, that same fan in the corner even then. I didn't even hear Maya at first when she walked in and froze. "You went back down there," she said flatly. I slid the photos into a pile. "Why didn't you tell me your aunt was investigated when Katya disappeared?" Her jaw tightened. "Because it was gossip. And because you're already halfway to convincing yourself this house is a crime scene. I didn't want to lose you to that." But her eyes darted toward the basement door like she was calculating how fast she could reach it. By that evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I called the police. I told them everything. The smell, the wall cavity, the Polaroids, the recordings. Detective Boychuk came the next day with 2 uniforms. He was calm, middle-aged. The kind of man who looked like paperwork was his true language. He listened to me, then listened to Maya. She played her role perfectly. A composed woman tolerating her partner's wild imagination. But when the officers pried away the plaster and pulled out the box, her face drained of color. They cataloged everything. Jars with murky contents, the bag of hair, the Polaroids. One officer pointed to a dark stain on the concrete near the rug. "Looks like something seeped through years ago." They scraped it into a sample vial. Maya snapped then. "You can't just take his word and tear apart my house. He's obsessed. He probably planted all of this. He has tools, boxes, God knows what." She gestured toward my toolbox still sitting near the wall from when I unscrewed the boards. Her voice cracked into hysteria, but Detective Boychuk didn't blink. He only asked, "Why would he plant photographs older than he is? Or jars labeled with dates 15 years ago?" She opened her mouth, closed it, then glared at me with such fury I felt it like heat. I pulled out my trump card, the recording from the old phone. I played it in front of everyone. At 2:20 a.m., the faint shuffle of feet, then the unmistakable sound of her whisper, "It's seeping again." The room went silent. The detective's eyes flicked to her. "That's your voice?" Maya shook her head violently. "It's edited. He's spliced." "Quiet," Boychuk said. They went back into the basement, this time prying at the opposite wall where the seam ran higher. Behind a loose plank, they found a hidden niche. Inside was a cloth bag, tied tight with twine. They opened it carefully. A bracelet spilled out first. Silver, tarnished but intact, shaped into the letter K. The air went heavy. Boychuk held it up. "This matches the missing girl's description." The bag held more, a small brass key, dulled with time. Maya's face went slack when she saw it. They followed it to the shed out back. It took 3 men to break the swollen door. Inside, crates stacked like someone had been stockpiling secrets. More jars, each sealed, some labeled with letters and dates. And on the shelf, a notebook. The handwriting was jagged, uneven. The last page read, "The smell isn't pipes. The smell is memory. The wall keeps it quiet." That line drilled into my skull. Detective Boychuk closed the notebook, expression unreadable. "This house is a crime scene," he said. Maya lunged at me then, eyes blazing. "You ruined everything. We could have just left it sealed. We could have had a life." The officers pulled her back, but her voice rang through the night air. "You think the house wants you now? You think it will let you walk away?" They dragged her out as she kicked and screamed. And for a long time I just stood in the basement doorway, listening to the fan hum, smelling the cloying sweetness that no one could explain away anymore. The house was quiet after they took her. Too quiet. For the first time in weeks, the fan in the basement had been unplugged, carried off as evidence, and without its steady hum, the silence pressed into me. I stayed a few nights at a friend's place, telling myself I'd never go back, but part of me couldn't leave it unfinished. My clothes, my books, even my laptop, they were still in that house, and I couldn't stop thinking about the words in that notebook. The smell is memory. When I finally returned, the front door wore bright yellow police tape, crisscrossed like the house was gift-wrapped in warning. Inside, the floors were scuffed from boots, the drawers gaping where they'd been searched, but the smell still floated faintly in the air, even after the windows had been left cracked. It was softer now, but unmistakable. I went down to the basement one last time. The walls looked naked without the boards, the cavity wide open. The rug was rolled in the corner, stained where the hatch outline had been. I stood there, listening. No ticking, no whispers, just the faint creak of the joists above me. I should have walked away. I should have locked the door and handed the keys to Detective Boychuk, but my eyes caught on a cardboard box tucked under the stairs, one that hadn't been tagged with evidence tape. It was sealed with duct tape, my own handwriting scrawled across the top. Maya, fragile. I didn't remember packing anything for her. Hands trembling, I peeled the tape. Inside were my hoodies, a stack of old papers, and beneath them, wrapped in a towel, a jar. I knew the smell before I even opened it. Sickly sweet, metallic. The same ribbon that had haunted every night at 2:17. Across the glass, in smeared black marker, 2 words, old pipes. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just her aunt's secret. Maya had kept something alive, even after. Maybe she thought it was loyalty. Maybe she thought it was inheritance. But the truth was clear. She had chosen to preserve it, to guard it, to pass it on like some terrible heirloom. I backed away, bile burning my throat. The jar sat in the box like an accusation, like it had been waiting for me. The smell thickened in my nose until it was all I could taste. I slammed the box shut and staggered up the stairs, out into the cold air. I stood on the porch, shaking, the words still hammering in my head. The smell is memory, Maya had said once in her softest voice. It's just old pipes. Don't overthink it. But now I knew better. Pipes don't whisper. Pipes don't tick. Pipes don't demand to be sealed behind walls. I left the house that night for good. Keys in Detective Boychuk's hand, swearing I'd never look back. But sometimes when I wake, in the small hours of the night, I swear I smell it again. Faint, metallic sweet, threading into my nose like a ribbon pulled taut. And I can't help but wonder if memory really does travel, if it seeps from the walls we leave behind, carried with us like smoke in our clothes. I tell myself it's just in my head. But at 2:17, I always check the clock. And I always breathe in deep, terrified that I'll smell it again.